Well, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about how to get rid of corns. Corns and calluses are areas of thickened, hard skin, anywhere where you have repetitive friction and trauma. A corn is an inflamed and painful thickened bump, and when the bump is kind of pared down with a razor blade, inside of it there's this thick, painful core. You can also develop what's called a soft corn. A soft corn happens where you have a lot of maceration, like in between the toes, for example, where there's a lot of friction, and overlying the bump is kind of moist and wet. Those are corns, but then there's also callus. In contrast to a corn, a callus is painless. Callus is just thickening of the skin in areas of repetitive trauma and friction. The cause of both callus and corns is repetitive friction and trauma to the skin. The outermost layer of the epidermis is called the stratum corneum, and its primary function, one of its primary functions we'll say, is to protect you against mechanical injury. When you have repetitive friction, the skin responds in an effort to protect against that. All the way down in your epidermis, at the base layer of the epidermis is a layer called the basal layer, and the keratinocytes that live there, they respond to that mechanical trauma by growing in number and sending out more cells up to the top to mature to become that shell that is the stratum corneum. And so the stratum corneum, the outermost layer, protective layer, starts to thicken, and you see that with your eyes in what appears as either callus or a corn. While calluses and corns most frequently happen on the hands and feet because these are areas of repetitive friction and trauma, truthfully, you can develop a corn or a callus at any body site where there is repetitive friction and trauma. Recently, I did a video, as a side note, all about dark elbows and knees. While dark elbows and knees are not frank callus, much of why they occur is due to similar pressures, literally pressure on the elbows and knees, and chronic friction, skin responding to that in thickening of the skin, and that appears discolored. Check out that video if that's something you deal with, because I give a lot of pointers there. A lot of people develop callus on their hands when they use a racket with tennis or like a golf club. Maybe it's related to your occupation. Many people develop a callus from hammering. There's a screwdriver's callus where you basically get callus on the palm from repetitive contact with the screwdriver. People who use a wheelchair can develop a callus on their knuckle from moving the wheels. A lot of people will get callus on the side of their foot from a tight-fitting shoe. If you go barefoot a lot, you can expect to develop some callus on the heels and the balls of your feet. There's also a prayer callus on the forehead. Cigarette lighter's thumb is basically a callus on the thumb that happens from flicking the cigarette lighter down. Hairdresser's hands is another one. Those of you out there, comment below who are hairdressers. With hairdressers, you often can develop a callus on the finger of your dominant hand where it's coming in contact with the scissors. Recently, I posted a short all about the feet on New York Fashion Week developing callus. Poorly fitted shoes, major reason for callus. Poorly fitted or shoes that do not provide proper arch support can lead to callus and corns. People who are at particular risk for corns and callus are those who have problems with neuropathy in their feet, like diabetics or people who have peripheral neuropathy related to other medical conditions. This can lead to gait abnormalities, and gait abnormalities set you up for uneven pressure on the feet and the formation of both callus and very painful corns. Another risk factor for developing callus and corns on the feet, the hands, is hyperhidrosis, excessive sweating, especially in the shoes. Like if you get really sweaty in there, it can cause maceration. Maceration, that actually sets you up for not only painful corns, it also puts you at risk for bacterial infections in the skin as well as fungal infections. Like I already mentioned, peripheral neuropathy and diabetes being a risk factor, but those patients, they may not have good sensation down there. They may not realize that they have the callus or the painful corns, but it becomes a problem to the point where now it's like a very hospitable environment for secondary infections from bacteria and from fungus, like athlete's foot. And the skin starts to get broken down. You develop these deep fissures there and within the callus, and that can be a portal of entry for bacteria and the like. So it's definitely not, something to take lightly. Another group of people who can really, develop painful corns and callus are those who have rheumatoid arthritis. Chronic inflammation in the joints of the feet can lead to foot deformity, uneven pressure, and then you get callus formation. So if you deal with corns and callus, how do you make it better? Like, how do you get rid of it? First of all, evaluate what it is that is putting pressure, friction on the skin. Make sure your shoes fit right. Tight fitting shoes, poor arch support, going around barefoot. These are all things that lead to a lot of friction on the skin and subsequent callus formation. If you're doing a lot of repetitive work with your hands, wear gloves, workman's gloves, to cut down on the friction there. If you're developing corns between the toes, you can use some cotton balls, lamb's wool, or toe spacers to cut down on the overlap between the toes that is leading to all of that friction. It can really make a difference for you. And also, again, make sure that your shoes are fitting well, because a lot of people will have shoes that are not, their feet are too wide for, and their toes will be squished in there, overlapping, and that gives you corns. Some cases, depending on the anatomy of your foot, you may benefit from custom orthotics. Lubricate those skin surfaces too. Don't underestimate how valuable petroleum jelly can be in this situation for lubricating and providing glide and slip to cut down on unnecessary friction. Now, if your callus gets to the point where you develop painful cracks, fissures, that can happen. What you can do in that situation, which sounds bizarre, but trust me, it is what is recommended, is to get something called crazy glue and put a little drop of crazy glue in the fissure and hold it together, and it will seal and help that come together and allow it to heal. And I know what you're thinking, like, isn't that dangerous? The stratum corneum there is so thick that really what you're doing is just creating a bandage there at the very top, so everything has a chance to come together. And this is the same stuff that is used in like surgical glues, liquid bandage, but it works really well for these painful cracks that, maybe you get them on your finger pads. It's common for a lot of people who do work by hand. A little bit drop of crazy glue in that fissure will help the skin come together and heal and recover. Try and keep your feet and your hands dry. This can be really hard for people who deal with hyperhidrosis, but that maceration leads to more thickening, callus formation, and painful corns. Change out of sweaty socks. Again, make sure your shoes fit well. If they're too tight, they don't breathe well, you're gonna get very sweaty, and that can cause a lot of friction in that shoe and, further lead to not only stratum corneum thickening, callus, corns, but when it's moist and macerated in there, that is just a heyday for athlete's foot, toenail infections, bacterial infections of the skin. It's not a good thing. When it comes to hyperhidrosis of the palms and soles, there are also a variety of other treatments for hyperhidrosis, excessive sweating on the palms and soles. I have videos all about this. I'll link some of them in the description box if that's something that you're dealing with. I mean, there are a lot of treatments like oral anticholinergics, glycopyrrolate to reduce sweat output. There's botulinum toxin. I know people always think of that in terms of wrinkles, but it works really well for excessive sweating. Excessive sweating can really, be debilitating for someone's quality of life and get in the way of, their occupation, their work. So, that's definitely something. I go over all of the treatments in that video, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but yeah, check that out if you deal with hyperhidrosis, because treating the hyperhidrosis will then help out with the callus formation quite a bit. Then you can take measures to decrease that thickening of the stratum corneum, whether it be the callus or the corn. What you want to do is soak your feet first, get that stuff good and soft. Get it very hydrated with water by soaking your feet, and then go in with the pumice stone and file a little bit of that callus down. You don't want to go too much though, because it can end up being irritating for you. And then, make sure you put on petroleum jelly to really lubricate the skin surface. You can also employ foot ointments that have keratolytics in them, urea, salicylic acid, alpha hydroxy acids. One of my favorites is the Carousel foot ointment. It works really great for these issues on the feet, the hands. Just be careful you don't get it near the eyes, because it is very strong. Using that a couple of times a week, in addition to these other modifications, can very much help. If you have painful corns though, you may need to see a podiatrist and undergo debulking, basically taking a surgical blade and very carefully and methodically shaving away at the corn, paring it down in an effort to get to that inner core that is, the source of the pain, to alleviate that and to help with redistributing pressure. Because once the corn gets to a point where it's thick, it's messing up pressure all in your foot and kind of pushing things around in your shoe and everything. So paring that down can make a huge difference. It's especially important if you have peripheral neuropathy, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, problems with, an underlying medical issue going on with the feet that is subsequently leading to positional imbalances and callus formation, especially if you have decreased sensation down there and poor healing. You definitely, want to be doing this under the supervision of a healthcare provider, a professional, a podiatrist. They are the experts on all things feet. All right, y'all. So those are my tips on how to get rid of corns and callus. They are a nuisance. I wish we could all have smooth, silky feet, but they are part of life. And when they become painful and thickened, these are some things that you may want to modify, introduce into your life, your routine, checking in with your doctor to make sure that this doesn't become a problem for you. Now, I really hope this video was informative to you guys. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.